This tier list covers the PlayStation fighting games I've personally played. Each title is ranked from masterpiece down to trash based on how polished, memorable, and satisfying the overall experience felt to me. Let's jump straight into the list. Guilty Gear Strive surprised me in the best way possible. When I spent time with it, the first thing that stood out was the stunning anime-style visuals paired with a powerful rock soundtrack that keeps every match feeling intense. What I like most is how the game makes big damage combos easier to understand while still keeping deep mechanics like Roman cancels for advanced players. The roster feels diverse and each character plays very differently, which keeps the experience fresh. Online performance is also very stable, which matters a lot in a fighting game. For me, Guilty Gear Strive comfortably sits in the masterpiece tier. Tekken 8 feels like a true evolution of the series while still respecting what made it great in the first place. When I played it, the new heat system immediately stood out because it pushes you to stay aggressive and keeps every round very active. The core movement, spacing, and punish games still feel classic Tekken, but the added mechanics make matches more dynamic. I also really like the improved training tools and replay system, which make learning much easier, especially if you want to level up your skills. The roster is strong, the presentation looks fantastic, and online performance is much better than before. For me, Tekken 8 clearly belongs in the masterpiece tier. Mortal Kombat 1 feels very familiar, but in a good way that keeps the series strong. When I played it, the fights immediately felt impactful, with every hit carrying real weight, and once I started learning combos, the flow became very satisfying. The new cameo fighter system adds a nice layer of strategy, letting me extend combos or escape pressure in smart ways. I also like how cinematic the story mode is, with high-quality cutscenes that make it feel like an interactive movie. There's plenty of single-player content too, even though Invasions mode can feel a bit repetitive over time. For me, Mortal Kombat 1 earns a spot in the excellent tier. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 is a game that I really wanted to like, but it just didn't work for me. Even though the sequel improves animations, adds voice acting, and introduces the new slime meter for extra depth, the overall experience still feels lacking compared to other platform fighters. When I played it, the combat didn't feel as satisfying or polished as the top games in the genre, and the single-player content didn't hold my attention for long. There are some fun character references and ideas here, but they weren't enough to keep me invested. Because of that, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 lands in the trash tier for me. DNF Duel is one of those fighters where I can see the good ideas, but the overall experience feels mixed. When I played it, the anime visuals looked great, and the combat system was easy to pick up thanks to the simplified special inputs. I do like how the MP system encourages you to stay active instead of just saving meter. But at the same time, the roster feels a bit limited, and the long-term depth didn't keep me hooked compared to the top fighters. The story is also pretty hard to follow if you don't know the source material. For me, DNF Duel ends up sitting in the mediocre tier. Street Fighter 6 is one of those rare fighting games that just gets almost everything right. When I played it, the drive system immediately stood out because it adds so many smart options for offense, defense, and pressure without feeling overwhelming. I also really like how the game welcomes new players with modern controls while still giving veterans the depth they expect. The training tools are excellent, the roster feels well balanced, and the Battle Hub brings back that classic arcade vibe in a modern way. Even the single-player content has real effort behind it. For me, Street Fighter 6 easily earns its place in the masterpiece tier. Them's Fightin' Herds is a game that really surprised me with how solid it actually is. At first glance, it looks very cute, but once I started playing, I realized the combat system has real depth and feels very polished. I like how each character plays very differently, and the magic mechanics add a nice layer of strategy during matches. The tutorial and netcode are also genuinely strong, which makes learning and playing online much smoother. That said, the biggest issue for me is the very small roster, which can make things feel repetitive over time. Because of that, Them's Fightin' Herds lands in the great tier for me. The King of Fighters 15 is a very solid entry that sticks closely to what the series already does well. When I played it, the classic 3v3 team format still felt strategic and rewarding, especially when building the right character order for big comebacks. The combat is fast and technical, and the new additions like Shatter Strike give you more defensive options during intense matches. I also appreciate the large roster and the excellent rollback netcode, which makes online play very smooth. That said, the single-player content feels pretty bare bones, and the game doesn't push the series forward in a big way. Because of that, the King of Fighters 15 sits in the excellent tier for me. WWE 2K25 is a game where I had a decent time moment to moment, but it never fully impressed me. When I played it, the in-ring action still felt solid and the roster is absolutely stacked, which is always a big plus for a wrestling game. Modes like Showcase and My Rise are improved and give you plenty to do. But at the same time, the overall package feels very similar to last year, and the new Island mode is a big letdown that drags the experience down. It's good in parts, just not strong enough across the board. Because of that, WWE 2K25 lands in the mediocre tier for me. Under Night in Birth 2 Celes is a sequel that mostly plays it safe, but what's here is still very strong. When I spent time with it, the fast-paced combat immediately stood out, especially if you enjoy learning longer, more technical combos. I also appreciate the addition of rollback netcode, which makes online matches much more reliable for a game that demands precision. The core gameplay feels smooth and responsive, and the roster additions are solid. However, outside of that, it doesn't evolve the formula in a big way, and some technical issues can be annoying. Even with those drawbacks, Under Night in Birth 2 Celes sits in the excellent tier for me. Dragon Ball FighterZ is one of the best anime fighters I've played in years. From the moment I jumped in, the visuals looked almost identical to the show, and the fast-paced tag battles perfectly capture that Dragon Ball energy. I really like how the controls are simple enough for newcomers, but once you start learning team synergy and longer combos, there's a lot of depth to explore. The roster is strong and each fighter feels unique, which keeps matches exciting. The story mode is a bit dragged out, but the core fighting experience easily carries the game. For me, Dragon Ball FighterZ deserves its spot in the masterpiece tier. Granblue Fantasy vs. Rising is a big step up from the original, and one that I genuinely enjoyed playing. The combat still feels very clean and fundamentals focused, but the new mechanics like ultimate skills and bravery points add more depth to think about during matches. I also really like that rollback netcode is finally here, which makes online play much more reliable. The roster is much bigger now and full of personality, and the improved training tools make it easier to learn new characters. The story mode is just okay, but the core fighting experience is strong enough to carry it. For me, Granblue Fantasy vs. Rising earns a spot in the excellent tier. That's my personal ranking of the PlayStation fighting games I've spent time with so far. Of course, your tier list might look very different, but based on my experience, these are the ones that stood out the most. Thanks for watching.